So, if you've never heard of this website, I would not be surprised. This is a website, fiff.gg, which stands for F is for Flash. I disagree. However, that being said, it's a meme. So, this is actually a great website. It's going to replace your typical standard op.gg, Fester, things like that, right? So, it's really tough to go into a market where you have don't judge my solo queue, okay? I had a bad day. And so you're going to have a hard time breaking into the environment of which you have op.gg and Porofessor and all of these big giants in this category of websites for League of Legends. That being said, there are a lot of features that are actually surprisingly really good. And on top of that, the dev themselves are on Discord. They're very eager to make adjustments. They make a Reddit thread every now and then explaining what they've changed, updating things like that. If you've never heard of this website, I highly recommend trying it out. It's great. So one of the biggest things that they actually offer is what's called, I believe they call it a 2D timeline. So let's go ahead and go to one of my. This is my old Smurf account. Um, it was botted apparently, so it got banned. But that's neither here nor there. So you can kind of see. Let's see. I look here. 3D timeline, right? Look at this. Like, name a website that does this, right? Where it shows you the loading screen. It shows a replay of having to actually go into the game. That is pretty great. The frame rate probably could be improved. That being said, this is an early alpha. This is like an early build of the website and the features and things like that. So it'll work even better. Um, so it allows you to like skip forward to different moments and things like that, like to show like when abilities were used. So if you just want to like find in a replay or something like that, something that someone did, it's pretty good. It's also really great to like analyze, like jungle clears are especially good, right? So the beautiful part about this platform is that it's essentially designed for coaches, right? Or to get coached is basically it. They really should lean into that. I told them this, and I think that they're listening. Um, so if you look at this, right, like most of the time you look at, oh, why not just open the replay? Well, not all people have the ability to open replay at any one point. You can do this on your mobile phone, things like that. It works just fine on mobile. Um, you can look at a jungle clear. Look up. You even have a movement heat map of the different roles. You can look at, if I can, how do I? You can view their entire runes. It looks like all of their things. You can check to see he has a full clear done, and he's on his scuttle at a little after 3 minutes. Right? He actually goes to scuttle. He just finishes his clear and then goes at about 3 minutes and 12 seconds. I'm not sure what it is. So we need more data endpoints from Riot, or they need. Sorry, not we. In order to actually display like jungle timers, but there are certain tricks that they can do to try to do that. But realistically, it's much better for analyzing movement. So you can actually look at the stat difference. So like if you know for a moment when you're in a trade, you can actually look at a better breakdown. And you essentially use the power of a replay to look at gameplay while also having a stat breakdown of a highly detailed website, right? Like no replay is going to tell you this, right? This is not going to happen. You have to figure it all out by yourself. Um, so these are all really cool. Like the goal difference, right, is really cool, which you can kind of see in the game through different menus and stuff like that. So if you look at it, actually, this is a new feature, drawing mode. That's really cool. Um, you can toggle full screen. You can clear drawings. There's also a help menu. Let's see. You can kind of see this is actually very clean. It's probably a way to control that. I haven't really messed with this since the last update. Here's a smiley face. So to go back here, you can kind of see how the 2D timeline works. And on top of that, if you look over here, there is some like things that can be fixed in regarding like Squall, for example, should have a different color to indicate its ability from the item, things like that. That being said, orange is kind of like that as well. I think a debuff itself, like Squall, should have its own unique thing. That's just me. Um, so let's see. Overall, this is a really, really great website. It does look really clean too. He's made continual efforts. It doesn't look like the best that it can, right? Like for example, I feel kind of similar in how there's the setup that they have for op.gg kind of tells you everything you need to know just by looking like right here, right? Like you have, let's do a comparison. This is the same account, right? And I want to look at see what I see when I first look at here. So I see the win rate, I see the roles that you play, the win rate for the roles. I didn't play enough champions on this account for this to actually be relevant. If you go to probably my main account, which is this one, I don't care if you add me or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Um, Go here, you can kind of see the same thing where you have the number of champions, the win rate of all these things. Again, don't judge my win rate. I barely play this. I barely play ranked anymore. Getting back into it. And up here, you can kind of see the past history. I kind of wish, I feel like that could be cool, especially this area down here. It's underutilized. I feel like that could be really cool. This video is also meant for like feedback for the dev. So that way he can adjust things or she, I don't really know of anything like that. Ranked champion stats. This looks pretty cool. About the same in op.gg, except like you don't have to reload the page and you can still preserve like some information, right? So it looks like this is quicker to load, I will say. It does have a live game feature, which I will check and I'll show later. Stream overlay is really cool. That is really dope. Like you can actually input your overlay into your thing to actually show this. This is an amazing feature. I don't think even op.gg does this. Um, and you can adjust the opacity. You can have more details. You can have like an actual streamer thing showing up all your recent games. This is really helpful if you want to get into streaming. That could be really cool. Set you apart. Even recently played with can show you like some information I feel probably could honestly not be its own tab. I feel like it could go into like adding an area under here. Again, I do think I think this is better for like mobile. Like this is more easily adapted to mobile, but I also feel like a grid system more similar to op.gg could also do fine because essentially you have like a lot of information. You can look at the games or you get critical information about the account just by scrolling down, which you have, and you have it in order of importance, right? You have their rank, their past rank, their champions with its associated win rate, their masteries, like what level of what mastery you can expect from their champions. So like if you're scouting for like tournaments and things like that, it could be really helpful. So ranked win rate is of course at the very bottom because you don't really need that. It's kind of duplicated. That's just a list of all champions. It would have more there, I suspect, but I again this account hasn't played nothing anything but Kennen in a minute. And then of course you have the recently played games. I will say I do wish I think it needs to have tags as well for the individual games to really especially compete with Porofessor. Because if you're familiar with Porofessor, it is really good in that openly it goes over like these tags, right? You have like the tags that indicates like trends with the individual player. The other one, Turkinen. I don't necessarily think like the no soul things, like AK they're playing Teemo or they play Teemo. That's just for fun, pretty much. Um, I feel like this is probably a more serious version of that, and I feel like it could have like for example struggles after the mid game. If you've noticed, for example, you can test this through data, right? You can tell if that individual if they fall off, right? If they fall off and they're playing like Jax, for example, like I went 1 in 15 because I'm bad at this game, and man, I was really high too. And so if they fall off, right, and you could say, hey, this champion is supposed to have a higher win rate at the end, and your winner of this champion actually declines, and it can actually give you feedback on like what to do, such as doesn't snowball as hard as they could, things like that. And that's just very easy just to test based on trends and then to factor into like the ranking you're in, filter by the rank. It might be kind of difficult to do that for like certain champions that aren't super common, like Kennen, for example, may not have enough games to really do that very easily. But like most champions that people are going to play are going to be popular, and so they're going to be able to do that. Overall, it looks really clean. I do want to test the live games. So I'm actually going to, you can actually hit spectate. That's nice. So let's go to theirs and test the live games. This is just a random player. I don't know this guy. Live game. That's what it looks like. Okay, so it's kind of bare bones. It did label the band champions, which is kind of useful. It doesn't really do that on op.gg without like without going to, I forget what it is, like team analysis or something, but it goes into like extra, like they have to go to a certain section to tell what bands there were, which kind of isn't necessarily great, like necessary in like a hindsight standard. But if you actually want to get better at the game in the sense of like you want to like coach a team and your team trying to get better, like having a list of like what the bands were could be kind of helpful. Um, I do wish there was more data here. Of course, the spectate game function is kind of nice. We'll see how that works here in a second. Um, Whereas, let's go to this player, for example, um, on op.gg, right? And then Porofessor, and we'll see what it looks like. Oh, oh, they're in Korea or something. Oh. Oh, okay. All right, here's what we're gonna do instead. Look up job, hashtag job. I don't know this guy. I think I have no idea who he's from. All right, so the live game. So you can kind of see this has a lot more information. I feel is really relatively helpful. You can look at the runes that each player made, and I think this is like this page is almost certainly under construction. So you can see how it has the keystones and everything, but it doesn't have the full rune page, which is definitely a big oversight. But this is one of those things that are definitely going to be adjusted over time, right? This is kind of feedback that is really helpful for him, and I'll make an update video after he has adjusted some of this stuff to see what it's like now. I will say being able to see the level is really helpful. You can't do that here because the level will indicate, right? For example, if I'm in like a high plat game and it's a level like 20 account, I'm gonna be a lot more suspicious of that person's win. Like if that person has a decent win rate and it's like a level 30 account, it's definitely a Smurf, right? But how elo that player is one thing, but it'll help you determine that. As well, the current rank with ALP is just kind of aesthetic. The rank win rate is also helpful because it helps you know like if your teammates are hard stuck or whatever. But again, it doesn't really matter all that much in a realistic standpoint. But it's still kind of nice to see. Like back when you could, for example, 100% know who you were playing with before you got into the game, before they anonymized everything, like with the name Gromp, Merkwolf, things like that. um, you could have used like, for example, if I was master people and all my teammates had like 300 games and 47% win rate, you could technically optimize your time and dodge the fuck out of that game, right? You absolutely could. Yeah, because your teammates are just gonna lose, and you have to carry them, which is whatever. Like from a realistic standpoint of like an actual high elo analysis, your teammates don't really matter that much. You can 1v9 almost every game, especially in like top lane and certain things like that. I don't want to get into that here, but yeah, your teammates are almost never the issue. But that does help you kind of stack the deck in your favor, especially if you're actually struggling to climb. You can't really do that anymore though. So these kind of information is just nice. It's aesthetic. It stayed in the game. It stayed in this website because it's always been there. And so like this kind of information, for example, would tell you that this player has played one game. They did pretty good in that game, but that's about it. This player has played, let's see, 181 games with a good positive win rate. Like this person may not be a Smurf, but they're going to climb eventually. This player will probably right. That's right. It's Emerald now. This player will hit Emerald eventually if they keep playing, right? If they play just Nami, they probably play like a bunch of random shit. Um, Teamfight Tactics is I would like to see something for at some point, but that's probably on the feature list at some point. But we're not necessarily really worried about that. The record feature is really good in op.gg, and I want that to be a thing for this game. Right now, it's only spectate. I don't know the requirements to do record, but that is a feature request I think could be really good for it because we want to have every feature other websites have. That being said, the aesthetic has, it's got some decent breakdowns and things like that. It's not crazy, right? Like it's not like Lolalytics, right? It's not like or not Lolalytics, Mobalytics. Are they dead? Right, and that it goes from a standpoint. This is probably the closest competitor. The thing is about their the thing is about the stats on Lolalytics is that it does have like a GPI score, which is essentially your way to look at your stats and get like analysis from it. The problem is it's paywalled now. It's literally paywalled. It used to be, but it's now it needs to not be. Now it is. Basically, there's no reason to use this website anymore without paying for it. And honestly, the very little analysis it gives you is something you could figure out just by like watching your replay or like looking at your stats. And honestly, I found when it was like free, it wasn't like bad. It was like decent, but it was definitely not worth paying for. And this is kind of the issue with these kind of websites is they're very hard to monetize successfully. OPGG obviously uses ads that I block the fuck out of, but hey, it is what it is. So the area that Mobalytics used to occupy, which essentially was the category where they say, hey, we have all this information available. We're going to take this and use it as much of analysis from like a high elo perspective as much as you can to be able to make actual conclusions that you can reach. Now, Professor does this to some extent, right? Like it does this to some extent. Goes to League of Graphs, which has been stated by Riot to be the most accurate data so far. Now, once a big enough data base is created for this website, because it takes a while, right? You have only so many API calls, etc. You have to be able to take time to build up your database of information to be able to create these tools to begin with, right? So that's why it's going to take a minute. But you can see where I love the tags on here. So you can see that in things like Mobalytics, it uses the tags to create conclusions and help you formulate better game plans, right? To be like, hey, these are areas of weakness that you are doing worse at. Now, it could be as simple as saying, hey, your farm is really low for someone at your rank and playing your champion. You need to work on that because at your rank and at your champion is like a decent standard. I don't think it's the best one to actually go by personally, but it's not terrible, right? Because it means someone that plays in your elo with your champion is doing better than you are. If you're doing better than that, you're likely above par on farming with that champion in that elo at least. It is a little bit different because it is a simple stat, but it actually has a lot to read into it, right? You could have scenarios, for example, that show, hey, I'm playing in silver and I'm farming at like eight. I'm getting perfect CS in silver on Nasus, right? That's never going to happen in Challenger. That's never going to happen in like Masters, right? You're going to be pressured off the wave. You can't get that much as much CS. You have to give them up based on fundamentals of top lane. It's kind of like that where you can have situations because it's elo relevant, right? That's the part that helps you make a conclusion that's safer, even if it's not necessarily the best conclusion, right? It's not necessarily the best statement to say your farm is perfectly adequate. The reality is you could be missing tons of free farm, and just looking at that number might not tell you that. However, looking at the number and it being below does confirm you need to work on it because you should at minimum be meeting the amount of CS that your people in your elo and your champion are meeting. That's the minimum threshold. It should be higher, most likely. Almost certainly it should be higher. But this is one point of these different data points can be helpful on developing this. By far, the best feature so far has got to be the 3D timeline. And as you can see, it works in any number of games. I do think, like for example, this could be the loading screen could be evolved, so you actually have to press a button um, to extend into the thing, and all right, to extend into the loading screen, right? So you actually could show like mastery and things like that, and then when you hit ready, it actually loads this. That being said, there may be a technological hurdle there that could be better served on like the actual like opening up the game. Like this isn't bad at all by any means. I do like how it doesn't necessarily overflood you with like all this data. I do kind of wish there was an option to tick it so it's always present. That could be nice. Um, Big thing also is I do wish that, for example, in the left tag, there could be a circle that indicates their mastery somewhere in there where you could just get it at a glance. That being said, this is really it's really useful so far. Even just approaching what it has so far and very early in development, it has features that no other website has, which I highly encourage you explore and utilize. In addition to that, I will say that since the dev is just really responsible in the sense of like, hey, they are listening to feedback and taking it into account in feature requests because their goal is to make it the go-to website. That is one hell of a hurdle to accomplish, right? Don't get me wrong, but I believe it's fully within their capabilities based on what I've seen so far. The 3D timeline just here is actually a really brilliant way to do it, and is a feature I never thought of to begin with. And I think it has a lot of potential for it, really. Especially because if you actually get enough data points and you refine it over time, this could be used, for example, to state like when where T fights are happening, and then pinpoint in the exact time in the replay where to go when. And that could save you a lot of time in reviewing over large enough time if you review every game. So if you're like a professional team, professional coach, things like that, these kind of features are a game changer. It's really good. And I think that in the end, it is going to be one of the best websites, if not the best. And I really look forward to that. So that being said, biggest criticism, right? So this page looks great. I do wish that it was easier to look at a glance all the information you could see on this page, right? If you go here on this page, you should be able to see. You can see all these different things. You should be able to see that on here at a glance, at minimum, um, because I feel like all this information is kind of nice to have to a certain extent. Especially because hey, if I have like 60 seconds to ban a champion in Clash, I don't have time to go through every little fucking thing and look at their mastery. I don't have time for that shit. Look, I look right here, and this tells me everything I need to know, right? Just in theory. Um, so very good. I feel like that is is a constructive criticism. I love the website so far. I wish there was a way to show mastery. Um, and let's see. I wish there was more information on the live game. Things like that. I feel like there is more potential. There's a lot of wide space, like especially on my monitor. Not all monitors are going to do that, so it's kind of tricky. That's one of the factors of web design. You have to factor in different monitor sizes. He went with a very conservative overall width that can be scaled proportionally. I don't blame him for doing that at all. So that's pretty good. Go to build. It shows pretty much everything you need to know. I wish it showed when items are sold, but I may not have sold any items that game. Um, you can see the skill order, the timing, everything. Another thing too, I will say, obviously it's going to be kind of difficult until we get data points for when jungle camps die. But I would love to see actual timers when jungle camps die as the big feature to go for the moment that becomes available. He did mention it seems like they are optimistic in order to do that. So I do look forward to that. Again, the stream overlay though is absolutely banger, 100% amazing. Um, Really cool feature. And I think that's gonna make it really stand out as well. I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of potential for this, and I think there are some things that can be improved. And on top of that, like the big is again, I want to be able to see everything at a glance. Okay, I want to see their mastery. I want to see. I don't necessarily care who they played with, unless it's live game, and I want to be able to see when it's in a pre-made, an obvious pre-made that's able to be told, they be able to be detected, obviously. Um, I want to see mastery. I want to see champions. I would love to see past rank, especially on like the individual page, right? Like for example, this could extend and this could show past ranks of like at least 2 to 3 seasons or something, you know. And again, I really want conclusion tags. I want the tags that show up like here that indicate like you have a higher winning result and stuff. Not all of it is useful. Don't get me wrong, but I think that's really good. However, my number one request. This is my number one request. If you do nothing else, listen to this. Okay, on the live game, right? On the live game, I want to see when I go to live game, I want to see if I hover over champion, I want to see a summary of that champion. I want to see their archetype. Like for example, Akali, melee AP assassin, um, like and then Bard, like range AP support. Okay. I also want to see their abilities and their cooldowns, and also an indicator for which ability is their key ability, right? Which one is indicative of a trade? For example, Jax E. Critical ability, when it's on cooldown, he can be punished, things like that. Where you show their critical abilities and ones with long cooldowns that have exportable windows. Like for Aatrox, his W, 20 seconds on cooldown, something like that. That is a really cool feature that no website does, right? OPGG doesn't do it. Porofessor doesn't do it. Mobile Literature shit doesn't do it. No one does it. You get that done, that's going to make more people want to go to you. That's going to cause a standard where everyone has to do it or they can't compete. And that's what you want. You want to define it. And I think having like the ability there, and again, I don't know what all is available to be called by the API, right? Maybe it's something that's kind of a pipe dream, mainly because, for example, if you can actually call like the cooldowns and things like that actively, maybe it's kind of a pain in the ass to maintain it. But that being said, it's not like you have to have it with CTR applied to it, right? You just have it where you just have the base cooldown from the wiki, and then you have to update like once a patch, right? I feel like that's a really good idea. That being said, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't used this website, I highly recommend it. I will put the link in the description. And if you are the creator, I very much appreciate the website. Thank you for listening to my constructive feedback. I really like this, by the way. So quickly see how much a player contributed to the game: solo kill, solo death, death assists. Um, Nice. Okay, that's really cool. Um, this is really cool features as well, especially the whether or not the game tune things like that helps remind you. You can, especially if you can look at it from a distance and at a glance. Okay, that'll about do it. And I want you guys to have a great day. Bye.